everyone. Um, Welcome to the session under the theme Echoes of Change. I think we're all energized for this panel after the drumming session. It's my pleasure to welcome our panelists for the session. We have Dr. Jennifer, who will be facilitating that session together with her colleagues. I think they will introduce themselves as they go along. They will be sharing insights on their study on how lecturers at WITS navigate teaching through English medium instruction in this multilingual context. So importantly, today's panel will reflect this diversity. Our panelists will be drawing from different languages. I believe there's French, Afrikaans, Tswana, South African Sign Language as well. So they will be using those in their engagement. I think this is not only symbolic, but a practical demonstration of the challenges and opportunities of multilingual teaching in higher education. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. I think you'll have about 20 minutes to present so that we have time at the end for questions. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks very much. It's really great to be here this afternoon. And just to build on what was said, we are, except for Guy, sorry, and actually Mia, but the rest of us who initiated this session are part of the ECAD program this year. And we were allocated to this particular group. So we come from different faculties, different backgrounds. And as we were getting to know each other with the intention of wanting to decide what our research project would be, we realized exactly what was just said, that even within our own group, we were really quite representative of the multilingual context in which we find ourselves as educators at WITS. So it was for that reason that we felt that it would be appropriate for us to investigate that topic further as part of our ECAD project. And so this panel discussion is just to create the space for us to open this conversation and to lead us also towards enriching our own study. I'm also quite mindful of the irony, in a sense, of me facilitating this session, in the sense that I am an English language, first language speaker. I'm really curious to learn more about my colleagues' experiences, in the sense that across the globe, English really has become the dominant medium in terms of the medium of instruction across universities, as we all know. And within South Africa, this plays out in a particularly unique way in our multilingual classrooms and staff rooms. And so while we acknowledge that English does bring access to the global academic networks, it also raises really profound questions of equity, identity, and transformation. And so what we'd like to pose, what we've posed 4 questions to our panelists. So I'm just going to go over the questions that we would like to discuss this afternoon. The first question that we're going to be posing is, please state what is your first language, and then describe your first introduction to academic English and what that experience has been like for you. Then we go on to what colleagues perceive as the main benefits of teaching in English in a multilingual student environment. We'd then like to touch on what our colleagues perceive to be the main challenges in teaching the English in such a multilingual environment. And then lastly, what are the main challenges that our colleagues individually or personally experience in using English as the medium of instruction. So how I'm going to facilitate this is each of the panelists in turn are going to have 3 to 4 minutes to respond to those questions. Just to remind everyone, one of our colleagues is online, so we're going to go across to Pinky in a few minutes. But yeah, just before I hand over to our first panelist, I just want to share that I grew up in Johannesburg, and as I say, English was my first language. And when I moved to Welkom in the Free State many years ago, about 30 years ago, I always sort of said to people at the time, it felt like I'd emigrated, in the sense that not only professionally did I have to learn to use Afrikaans at that level, but also culturally and socially. So I'm really curious to hear about my colleagues' experiences, and perhaps if we could start with you, Guy. I'm not sure if you'd like to start with one of the particular questions, but over to you. If you want to maybe just put on your mic and then.
Hello, I'm Dr. Guy McElroy. This is my sister, because we also grew up in Joburg, and English is also my home language. So I was born there, but I went to an oral school, so mainstream there. So for me, home language is very much English, and that's what I grew up with. So that's to give me one side of it. I think one thing that's important, because we give a different perspective. I always thought, English is my language and I'm going to meet everybody else and it'll be easy. But it doesn't work like that. I mean, the different languages make it difficult. But my background is I was an English teacher for 10 years before I came to Wits. And that was probably the one part of the experience that I wanted to talk about, we'll link to here, is because I was teaching most of the learners there English at home language level to them who are doing English as second or third language. And that to me was a big challenge, because I found that was really made me think about how to teach English. Because like the first question asking about my first academic experience about academic English was at Rhodes. I thought, like most people at the time, I had a good English mark and I was good at English. Everyone spoke English at home. I'd have no problem with English university with academic English. But I did. I was shocked to find out that academic English was so much harder than simply just writing whatever you want. Didn't work like that. And I actually needed to acknowledge that I needed academic skills development at the time. At first, when the lecturer proposed that to me, I was so embarrassed. I thought, what's wrong with my English? I'm English speaking. What's the problem? I thought of my ears. No, it's my language. And it's important to know that, and it's important to understand how to teach English by teaching English. That's why I became a teacher for English, because then learning the rules, the grammar, and how to structure argument, how to write good essays is a skill. It doesn't come automatically, even for first language speakers. And that was useful, because later on I moved into sign language, because I wasn't coping with hearing learners. I acknowledged that. And I moved to Wits, and I learned sign language at the same time. But I want to share that with you, and I think that's partly the reason why Sal invited me here. It was actually, sign language perspective is different because it's visual language. I had to go through the process, maybe you had the same thing, of learning another language yourself. And I don't think we can get away with that in South Africa, to be monolinguals. That's not the way it should be or could be. So the benefits for us is to learn many languages, because as I was learning sign language, I learned a different culture, a different way of thinking, and new, what we call it, epistemology, the way we see the world, we see the world visually, because that's their culture. We do things differently. You've got to learn the culture with the language. You cannot separate the two. And that's really important. It's from that, it gives me the chance to understand what the students were doing in class. They learning a second language. And I need to understand that process for them from my side, because I was doing the same thing. When we are learning the second language ourselves, we're much more empathetic towards our learners. So then we see what they're struggling with. So that's really where I want to get to with you.
Sure. Thanks. Shall I say thanks, my brother? Really appreciate those insights and really looking forward to creating the space just now that we can engage in some of the issues that Guy has raised. Is Pinky online? Are we able to cross to her now? I don't know, Pinky,
Yes,
if
I
Pinky
am.
could be, are you unmuted?
Yes, I am. I'm not
Okay,
sure if I'm
awesome.
audible.
Pinky, thanks so much for joining us online. So please go ahead, you're audible, and we're really looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this topic.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, colleagues. My apologies that I couldn't join you face to face. Let me just go straight to the questions that Jenny asked. Thank you, Chair. Your first question was, okay, you said we need to introduce ourselves. My name is Pinky Sehori. I'm from the College of Law, Commerce and Management. I work in the School of Business Science as a lecturer of insurance and risk management. To go to the first question, my first language is Sepedi. When was I introduced to English? Obviously in primary school, where you are introduced to formal reading and writing tasks that were different from your everyday conversations at home. This is now at school where you're expected to do things in English. But the challenge is that after school, you still go back to speak to your home language. So that does not emphasize, that not make English your first language at all. Experience was challenging, but it was an eye-opening as it required one to learn more new vocabulary, sentence structures to understand and express more complex ideas in English. So what do you perceive as the main benefit of teaching in English? I would say it provides a common language that enables clear communications across the globe and from diverse linguistic backgrounds. As we come from a different linguistic background, so English obviously will give us a common language and that we can use as a clear communication. Also, I would say it facilitates access to vast range of educational resources and global knowledge, enhancing our students and us as lecturers, as teachers in our academic performance. Additionally, I would also, it prepares our students for global citizenship by equipping them with a language widely used internationally. Both in education, business, diplomacy, I'm sure you would always find in the French, in the French-speaking countries, you would always find somebody who would interpret that in English, even if they use the French as the first language. I'm just picking one for that matter, not all. So what do you perceive as the main challenges of teaching in English? Yes, our key challenges, the varying levels of education proficiency among students. You find that you've got those students that indeed, like the previous speaker, that they are first English speaking, they speak language English at home, but you also find the pinkies in your class that you need to accommodate. So that on its own, it creates barriers to understanding and participating in lessons. So sometimes we coin students as introverts, only to realize later that they can't express themselves because of English. As teachers, we must adapt the method and accommodate different languages abilities, which this often requires additional times and resources. So, and again, furthermore, students may feel excluded or less confident if they struggle, like I said in my previous point, that you would coin a student to introvert only to find that they cannot express themselves. My main challenge as a teacher was that during my teaching, I experienced anxiety. That anxiety was stemming from the fact that I myself was not confident with my English proficiency. I wasn't sure that if whatever that I'm going to teach, I'm going to deliver to students, they will understand him, or if I'm speaking the correct English. So that was a concern for me to say this might negatively influence the classroom, even though I'm the expert in the subject matter that I'm teaching, but the delivery method might be the challenge. And some challenges also ensuring that all students comprehend the subject language better when English proficiency, it differs in the classrooms, widely in the classroom. So there was also another challenge in balancing English instruction while respecting the incorporating student home language to support their learnings. With all these the decolonization and the language policies that is asking us to bring the home language, it's also another challenge, though we are getting somewhere. So those were the challenges that I faced, and I think I would give it back to you, Chair, and thank you very much for the time allocated to respond to the questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Pinky, and especially for, yeah, for making yourself vulnerable and sharing with us around the issues of anxiety. You know, I was just listening to you and thinking most of us are familiar with, or at least know about, imposter syndrome, but I think that puts another whole spin on it. So thank you so much for all the points that you've also shared. And also for keeping to time. So I'd like to go on then to the next panelist. Mignon, thank you so much also for joining us this afternoon. And I know we're already looking forward to hearing your views and perspectives. Thanks.
Thanks, Jenny. My name is Mignon. I am a lecturer at the speech therapy department, which now, as I said, I realized that I am supposed to specialize in speech and language. But my first language is Afrikaans, and I think what is different than people who are multilingual from an African perspective is that everything I've done so far has been in Afrikaans. My family is Afrikaans, primary, high school, even some of my undergraduate studies was in Afrikaans. So I only switched over to English in my third year, and so I've only been exposed to academic English in my postgraduate studies, and still to this day I'm not heavily exposed to English in my day-to-day living. I have good friends that are English and like a little bit of social English, but most of my day-to-day living is still in Afrikaans. So it's only been, and I haven't been in the academic sphere for a very long time. So academic English for me is still brand new for me. I've only started here at Wits last year. So for me, some of the benefits, I think I looked at the benefits mainly towards me personally and maybe towards the students, but I think that as an English second language speaker, when I teach a group of students, I realize that actually we are all on the same playing field because there are very few students whose first language is actually English. So it's almost like there's unity in that. There's this unity in this diversity that we are all second language learners. So for me, I think that the students hopefully appreciate that their lecturer also comes from a place where it's my second language and I have to think as I'm talking, and I struggle with expressing myself sometimes. So there's no one culture when it comes to a classroom, and we're teaching in English, and English is my second language as well, and there's no superior culture. We're all on the same playing field. Some of the main challenges, I took the challenges as what is challenging for me personally in teaching English as a second language. And I think by far the biggest challenge for me is that I feel very inferior when it comes to my vocabulary. Find often that I know the word, I know exactly what I want to say. It's here and it's in Afrikaans, and I just can't translate it quickly enough. And I think my students appreciate it a little bit because I often use gestures. I should come for a lesson or two in sign language so that I could have formal gestures, but I often go to the students like the word that I'm thinking about is it's when it goes like this, and they just have to pop out words until yes, that's the word that I was looking for. So for me, there's a big when it comes to vocabulary that I often struggle with word finding problems. The second thing that I struggle with when teaching in English is that there's a little bit of a reduced spontaneity because you have to think as you speak. It doesn't come out naturally. I'm constantly translating as I'm speaking, and so there's some part of my personality that doesn't always come through when I'm teaching in English specifically. Yeah, and like I say, I'm constantly translating. I think the benefit about that is that at least my speed in the class slows down because I have to like think about a thing before I say that and say it. On a personal note, I want to say what's a personal challenge. You used the word imposter syndrome, and I literally wrote it down here because it sometimes feels that you have to keep up with the academic demand, or the see, wait, I wrote it down here, the high level academic discussions. You have to keep up, and you sometimes feel inferior because you might be a little bit slower or not quick to respond, or have to think about it before I can actually say it. That's the one challenge that I have. And the second challenge is that academic writing is very difficult. Okay, I have to finish up. The last thing I just want to say is that there's one little personal benefit for me, is that you can totally separate personal and work. Like personally, I'm Afrikaans, but at work, I'm 100% English, and you can just separate that. So that's a nice benefit for myself to have.
Amazing. Thanks so much. I'm sorry for cutting you off there. We just do have a time
I'm a
allocation.
speech therapist. I can continue talking forever.
No, you're in good company. And yeah, also really, really insightful and thought-provoking insights. And again, appreciate your vulnerability in terms of sharing some of those aspects with us. I'm going to hand over then to Elaine to take us home before we open up the space for a more general discussion. Elaine, over to you.
Bon après-midi. Okay, my name is Alain Nyembwe from the School of Chemical and Metallurgical Engineering. Teaching some specialized courses there. My first language is French. I've been battling with accent, the French accent. Now I give up because it's not easy. Now, I've been introduced to English when I came to South Africa. I came to do my post-grad studies. And the first day, it was in Pretoria, University of Pretoria. The first day when I show up to the department, they said, okay, you want to do your PhD, your postgrad studies, but we have a test. You have to go to interview and writing a test. I was not myself, I remember, because I didn't know much of English. I knew that the basic, and now I support to go to academic English. It was not easy. I went through the interview, wrote a test. It was fine, they accept me. After 2 weeks, they said, no, in the system, UP system, you have to go through, start by honors degree, honors classes. Oh, I say, oh, another mountain I have to climb. And the first day in that course, I didn't understand anything because I was the only foreign student, and the teacher had that African accent. Now it was confusing. I didn't understand anything whatever he was saying, because himself, somewhere they said, no, I don't know this word in English is passage in Afrikaans. It was confusing. Yeah, that just me close that chapter. Now of teaching in English, in general, our students must compete with others all over the world. Now we have to give that exposure. They have to go with confidence, because we know that with English it become a common language in academy or whatever you're doing. Even when you're looking for a good job, sometimes they require you to be fluent in English. But my challenge is when I'm teaching English is because I'm teaching some specialized courses. Now to break them down, it always takes me time, a lot of time, because I have to simplify. And during the teaching, the way I'm teaching, sometimes I can lose. I don't have the word, as Mignon said, to express something but I try using other tools like graphics, a picture, so that my student they can understand what I mean when I'm teaching. Another thing that I observe when teaching is like when I'm teaching, I mean, I can see some students as well struggling the same problem I had. The same time we are teaching them, they want to think first, I mean, from English to their own language. I observed it during tutorial from English to their own local language. Now they want to respond to me from local language to English again. You see, and you see the class now is losing the energy. Even myself, I don't manage very well the time because it's taking time to the student to understand what I'm teaching them. But for me personally, English helped me to connect with other people because now I can interact with people from UK, from USA. When you go to conferences, yeah, that is a benefit for me. But it's still a learning curve. I'm still because my vocabulary is not very good enough, but I'm trying to strive every day to learn new words. Yeah.
Sure. Amazing. And I really want to compliment all of the panelists for keeping to time so carefully. We are almost at the end of the time available for this session. So I just want to make a few brief comments, and then I'd love it if we could get some engagement from those of you that have joined us. I think what I really picked up so clearly from all of our panelists was obviously the complexity of navigating the space, but also that there are very clear advantages in some ways, and there's acknowledgement of that. But also, for me, a big theme that came through was almost the cost to self, the fact that it takes an enormous cognitive effort, an enormous emotional effort, and possibly social effort to learn a brand new language. And I think, as was also pointed out, that academic English isn't just English. So there's also nuance and complexity there. But just the huge amount of effort that this involves for all concerned, and also that there's seemingly some loss involved in this process, almost loss of self. But the flip side of that is the opportunity for compartmentalization, in a sense, getting a so-called work-life balance. I've heard of it. I'm not sure that I do it, but I believe that it exists. So perhaps let me stop there and invite anyone online or here with us to, I don't know, ask any of the panelists questions that you maybe have, or perhaps take the opportunity to also share your own experiences as academic staff at WITS, who are also grappling with the multilingual space that we find ourselves in. And I'm not sure if Wele or I are going to facilitate this, but yeah, perhaps if you'd like to go first. Thanks.
I just wanted to share an experience I had when I was doing my undergrad studies at the time it was called the Rand Afrikaans Universiteit. And what I had to do, because English is my first language, and obviously the country was going through change at that time, I had to attend the Afrikaans classes during the day, which I didn't understand. And then I also had to attend the evening classes as well. And that was in my first year. So it made it, very challenging. I was very demotivated. However, in the second year, they then changed to English. Yeah. But again, it's something that I really struggled and battled with in my first year.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And I think that also speaks to the time involved in navigating the space. Thanks. Yeah, please, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. I think it was a very interesting discussion, and it just made me reflect. In actual fact, there's 3 different languages that we are
using in academia. One, the everyday language, which is the language that we need to be teaching our students in, otherwise they don't understand. Then we are teaching them the language of the profession. So if you think about physiotherapy, so it's anatomy, physiology, that's a new language on its own. And then there's academic English that we have to learn. It was very refreshing, Million. I actually had to take an English course after hours. And it wasn't until the end of it that I realized I know more than what I thought I did. So, and that is very helpful. So thank you for sharing your experience as well.
Thanks so much for that comment. And as I'm sitting in the chair, if I can add that one of the reflections on this morning's discussions is that, of course, nonverbal language and nonverbal communication is the other language or languages that we all navigate, even as they align or don't align with verbal language. I believe that our time is up, is it? So perhaps if I could just close by again thanking each and every one of the panelists. We really appreciate your insights and also sharing some of your personal experiences. Also the other members of the group, the ECAD group, for preparing for this panel discussion today. And we, as I did mention at the beginning, our ECAD study is going to be on this topic, particularly the experiences of WITS colleagues, WITS staff, academic staff who are navigating the space. So please watch out for our electronic survey, and we would really appreciate if you could find the space and the time in your crazy schedules to also participate in our upcoming study. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you to all of our panelists, as well as the ones that are online, for that session. I think they've given us something to think about when we go into the teaching space. I think what you said was actually, it made me think about it a bit, to say, you know, there's academic English, and then you might try to explain that in standard spoken language, but we don't really think about the international student as well, like that translation from academic to standard to something that they can relate to as well. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
I don't think there are any comments online at this point, but if you are able to use the Padlet, please put in any reflections, comments, questions on this particular topic, as well as your thoughts throughout the day. Thank you.